Unit 26. Expression of doubt, condition, hypothesis, and contrast. There are several ways to express people's attitudes to the reality dealt with by the information conveyed in an utterance. In many cases, the truth or falsehood is assumed rather than stated. This is conveyed through the speaker's grammatical and lexical choices and relates to the expression of uncertainty, condition, hypothesis, and contrast. Some clauses of time and place may express a general notion of contingency, relationship between the situations described in the subordinate and superordinate clauses, a relationship also conveyed by conditional if clauses. Some temporal clauses may imply relationships of conditions and concessions, and some clauses of place may imply contrast. It is also important to notice that many conjunctions and conjuncts expressing those three logical relationships of condition, concession, and contrast may otherwise convey meanings of time and place, as in the following examples. And there is a chart here: conditional, concessive, contrastive, conjunctions as long as, in the event that, in the concessive, whereas, while, in the contrastive, whereas, while. And then conjuncts in the conditionals are then, in that case, in the concessive, besides, yet, and in the contrastive, on the other hand, and instead. There is also considerable overlap in adverbial clauses that express condition, concession, and contrast. Conditional clauses convey the idea that the situation in the superordinate clause is contingent on that in the subordinate clause. Clauses of contrast merely convey a contrast between two situations. Concessive clauses may also imply contrast, but their main role is to imply that the situation in the superordinate clause is unexpected in the light of that in the concessive clause. We can check these differences in the following examples. If the weather is fine, comma, in between brackets we have then, and then we'll have a barbecue. I repeat, if the weather is fine, comma, we'll have a barbecue, and it's implied then. Whereas the US has immense mineral wealth, comma, Japan, in between brackets in contrast, has comparatively little. So whereas the US has immense mineral wealth, Japan has comparatively little. And it's implied the in contrast, that's why they place the brackets. Although admission was free, comma, in between brackets, nevertheless, few people attended the lecture. So we could read, although admission was free, comma, few people attended the lecture. In all the examples, the items in brackets show the different conjuncts that optionally correlate with the three clauses. All three types of clauses tend to assume initial position in the superordinate clause. All in all, in this topic we will present the different ways to express the meanings of condition, hypothesis, contrast, and uncertainty in the English language, by making it clear that language is not a clear-cut unit of meaning. We will start by studying the expression of condition. Just to do it, we will refer to conditional clauses. We will first take into consideration the concepts of direct and indirect condition. The central uses of conditional clause express a direct condition, that is, the truth of the preposition in the superordinate clause is a consequence of the fulfillment of the condition in the conditional clause, and the if clause functions as an adjunct. Here is an example. If you put the baby down, she'll scream. In uttering this sentence, the speaker intends the hearer to understand that the truth of the prediction she'll scream depends on the fulfillment of the condition of you are putting the baby down. The hearer also in practice infers the converse. If you don't put the baby down, she won't scream. However, the speaker may cancel the implication by hedging, for instance, expressing some uncertainty. If you put the baby down, she'll scream, but she may scream anyway. More peripheral uses of conditional clauses express an indirect condition. The condition is not related to the situation in the superordinate clause, and the if clause functions as a style disjunct. Consider, she is far too considerate, if I may say so. In uttering this sentence, the speaker does not intend the truth of the assertion. She is far too considerate to be dependent on obtaining permission from the hearer. Rather, the condition dependent on the implicit speech act of the utterance. I'm telling you, if I may, that she is far too considerate. In conventional politeness, the speaker is making the utterance of the assertion dependent on obtaining permission from the hearer, though the fulfillment of that condition is conventionally taken for granted. Indirect are mainly realized by if clauses. We can distinguish several clauses of style disjuncts. First, the conditional clause is a conventional expression of politeness, which makes the speaker utterance seemingly dependent on the permission of the hearer. If you don't mind my saying so, your sleep is showing. Other examples of formula are the following: if I may say so, if I may put it bluntly, if I may be personal, if you can keep a secret, if we can be practical for a moment, if I may interrupt, if I may change the subject. Second, the conditional clause is a metalinguistic comment which hedges the wording of the utterance, either suggesting that the wording is not quite precise or that it should not be misunderstood in some sense not intended by the speaker. His style is florid, if that is the right word. She is resigning, if you know what I mean. In the first example, the speaker is uncertain of the correctness of the wording. In the second one, the speaker is uncertain whether the hearer will interpret the wording correctly and therefore warns the hearer to interpret it in the intended way. Other examples are the following: if that is the correct term, if you see what I mean, if you like. Although the clauses with T indicate explicitly the speaker's uncertainty, clauses such as if I may put it so may be used to convey a warning more indirectly. 3. The condition clause expresses uncertainty about the extralinguistic knowledge required for a correct interpretation of the utterance. The uncertainty may be the speaker's or the hearer's. I met your friend Caroline last night, if she's your friend. Other examples include the following: if I'm correct, if I understand you correctly, in case you don't remember. The conditional clause expresses the condition under which the speaker makes the utterance. If you are going my way, I need a lift back. In case he ever asks you, I don't know you. If you want to borrow a shoe brush, there is one in the bathroom. Where did your parents go, if you know? For all four types, the uncertainty of condition provides a tentativeness which adds politeness to utterances. After explaining the different types of indirect condition, we are going to focus on direct conditions. A direct condition may be either an open condition or a hypothetical condition. Open conditions are neutral. They leave unresolved the question of the fulfillment or non-fulfillment of the condition, and hence also the truth of the proposition expressed by the superordinate clause. If Colin is in London, He is undoubtedly staying at the Hilton. The sentence leaves unresolved whether Colin is in London, and hence it leaves unresolved whether he is staying at the Hilton. A hypothetical condition, on the other hand, conveys the speaker's belief that the condition will not be fulfilled for future conditions. If not fulfilled for present conditions, or was not fulfilled for past conditions, and hence the probable or certain falsity of the proposition expressed by the subordinate clause. If he changed his opinions, he'd be a more likable person. They would be here with us if they had the time. If you had listened to me, you wouldn't have made so many mistakes. The precise formulation of a speaker's belief depends on the time reference of the conditional clause. For future reference, the condition is contrary to expectation. For present reference, it is contrary to assumption. For past reference, it is contrary to fact. If is the main conjunction used in hypothetical conditions. The distinction between open and hypothetical conditions is important grammatically because the verbs in hypothetical conditions are back-shifted. And then we have a chart here, present and future reference, past reference, and then 2 columns, conditional clause, subordinate clause. In present and future reference, and in the column of conditional clause, we have past, if I were younger, and then in the superordinate clause, past modal, I would study classical Greek. And in past reference, we have past perfective, if I had seen you, and then in the column of superordinate clause, we have past perfective modal, I'd have invited you home. So, reading out loud the 2 sentences, it is, if I were younger, I would study classical Greek. And then, if I had seen you, I'd have invited you home. The most common way to express hypothetical meaning is with the modal verbs in their past form, whenever it exists. Compare the following examples. If the United States can win this game, they may become the world champions. If the United States could win this game, they might become the world champions. The second sentence expresses an unreal condition. That is, it conveys the speaker's expectation that the USA will not win the game and therefore will not become world champions. For past hypothetical meaning, which normally has a contrary to fact interpretation, we must add the perfective aspect. If the USA could have won that game, they might have become world champions. All past tense modals can be used in this way to express the hypothetical version of meanings such as ability, possibility, permission, prediction, and volition, with the epistemic possibility of might. However, it is the meaning of the following prediction rather than of the modal itself that is interpreted hypothetically. This will be evident from the following paraphrases. They might have become champions. It is possible that they would have become champions. We could have borrowed the money. It would have been possible for us to borrow the money, usually with the implication, but we didn't. In some contexts, especially when referring to the future, the unreal meaning of past modals becomes weakened to a meaning similar to improbability. Not even a professional could do better than that. From such instances, it is easy to understand how the hypothetical use of past modals has become adapted to express tentativeness. Along with these common types of structures, we must also mention those conditional clauses which have an added value. First, rhetorical conditional clauses give the appearance of expressing an open condition, but like rhetorical questions, they make a strong assertion. There are 2 types of rhetorical if clauses, one in which the assertion is derived from the conditional clause and the other in which it is derived from the superordinate clause. A. If the proposition in the superordinate clause is patently absurd, the proposition in the conditional clause is shown to be false. If they are Irish, I'm the Pope. If you believe that, you'll believe anything. B. If the proposition in the conditional clause is patently true, the proposition in the superordinate clause is shown to be true. This type is used with measure expressions with the implication of at least the measure stated in the conditional clause. The if clause is positioned finally. He is 90 if he is a day. If you agree that he is a day old. The painting must be worth $1,000 if it's worth a cent. 2. Alternative conditional concessive clauses. The overlap between condition and concession is particularly marked in the two types of adverbial clauses term. Two alternatives: alternative conditional concessive and universal conditional concessive. The correlative sequence whether or is an alternative condition in that logically it combines the conditional meaning of if with the disjunctive meaning or, either or. It is thus a means of coordinating two subordinate clauses. If the second unit is a full clause, whether may be repeated, as in the following examples. You will have to face the publicity whether you want or not. Whether or not he finds a job, he is getting married. The concessive meaning emerges from the unexpected implication that the same situation applies under two contrasting conditions. Thus, the third example above may be paraphrased. Even if he finds a job or even if he doesn't find a job, he's getting married. The longer and more emphatic construction, it doesn't matter whether, in each and only, and no matter whether can also be used to introduce clauses that are alternative conditional concessive. For example, you will have to face the publicity whether you want it or not. It doesn't matter whether or not he finds a job, he's getting married. The same conjunctions also introduce non-finite and verbless clauses. Sarah is always intense, whether reading or playing. Whether trained or not, Marilyn is doing an excellent job. The conjunction may be omitted, but the clause is then normally initial. Working or playing, Sarah is always intense. Trained or not, Marilyn is doing an excellent job. There are also verbless clauses introduced by with, which is then correlated with without. Will buy the house with a bank loan or without one. With or without a bank loan, will buy the house. The same meaning may be conveyed merely by the coordinated noun phrases if the second is negated by the determined no. Will buy the house, bank loan or no bank loan. This construction is always available when the implied verb is be rather than have. I have to go to work, rain or not rain. Whether or not there is rain. A further reduction is possible, though less common. By the omission of the second noun phrase, the reduced clause is then placed initially. Bank loan or no, will buy the house. In all the types exemplified, the indefinite article is omitted in the parallel structure before canned nouns such as bank loan. 3. Conditional expressing volition. In this type, the conditional clause uses will in order to express wish. If the children will help, she will finish in time. Let's now study some special uses of the verb phrase in the conditional clause. The present subjunctive is sometimes used for open conditions in conditional clauses. Instead of the normal present tense, this use is mainly confined to very formal, legal, or quasi-legal context. If any vehicle be found parked on these premises without written permission, it shall be towed away at the expense of the vehicle's owner. Two ways of expressing future hypothetical conditions are occasionally used in formal context. They have overtones of tentativeness. Was to, were to, followed by the infinitive. If it was or were to rain, the ropes would snap. They are far too tight. Should, followed by the infinitive, putative should. If a serious crisis should arise, the public would have to be informed of its full implications. We should also bear in mind that where is a singular past subjunctive form of be, but as shown, both the past subjunctive and the past indicative forms are possible for hypothetical conditions, the subjunctive being preferred by many, especially in formal written English. If John were here, he would soon learn the truth. Regarding the idioms, if I, blah blah, you, by convention usually contains the subjunctive where, though was also occurs frequently. We may also signal the conditional relationship without using a conjunction, but by subject-operator inversion, which affects the structure of the verb phrase. The most common use of this inversion in conditional clause is with the operator had, and we use not for the negative before the lexical verb. Had I known, I would have written before, if I had known. Had I not seen it with my own eyes, I would not have believed it. Inversion was also occur in somewhat literary style with subjunctive were and tentative should, and more rarely the operator maybe, could, and might. Were it to reveal its secrets, the house would collapse in shame. Should she be interested, I'll phone her. Could I see my native land, I would die a happy man. Finally, we are going to refer to the different subordinators and structural patterns of conditional clauses. The most common and most versatile of the conditional conjunctions is if. We, therefore, generally employ it in the section that followed to illustrate the different uses of conditional clauses. The negative conjunction, unless, is the next most common. Other conditional conjunctions are as long as, so long as, assuming that, given that, in case, in the event that, just so that, on the condition that, provided and providing that, supposing that. General recurrent contingency is expressed by once, when, whenever, where, wherever. In addition, several conjunctions combine condition with the time, before, as long as, when, once, whenever, except that, and conjunctive only combine exception with condition. All these conjunctions are used with finite clauses. She may go as long as he goes with her. You may leave the apartment at any time, provided that you give a month's notice. Between the conjunctions that are especially conditional, only if and unless introduce non-finite clauses, mainly ed participle clauses and verbless clauses. They are marginally acceptable in ing participle clauses. The grass will grow more quickly if watered regularly. Unless otherwise instructed, you should live by the back exit. If wet, the pipe won't give you a good smoke. It has little taste, unless hot. Here belong the positive and negative conditional pro clauses, if so, if not. The implied subject is the superordinate clause itself, or part of it. In some verbless if clauses, including the common, if possible, if necessary, Marion wants me to type the letter if possible. Moreover, non-finite and verbless clauses with, without, as conjunction may express a conditional relationship. Without me to supplement your income, you wouldn't be able to manage. With them on our side, we are secure. Now we have explained the expression of condition. we will focus on the expression of contrast. Clauses of contrast are introduced by several of the conjunctions that introduce confessive clauses. Example given: whereas, while, whilst. Indeed, there is often a mixture of contrast and confession. The contrastive meaning may be emphasized by correlative, antithetic conjunctions, such as in contrast and by contrast when the contrastive clause is initial. Mr. Larson teaches physics, while Mr. Corby teaches chemistry. I ignore them, whereas my husband is always worried about what they think of us. The three conjunctions are interchangeable, except that the less common whilst is found especially in British English. Clauses of contrast are very similar to clauses coordinated by but. This is particularly so when the constructive clause is final. When the constructive clause is initial, it is viewed as containing the subordinate information, the point of departure for the contrast. John is very generous, whereas Tom isn't. But Tom isn't. While John is very generous, Tom isn't. And asterisk means that is wrong if you cannot say, but John is very generous, comma, Tom isn't, so that is not possible. Finally, we will refer to the expression of uncertainty. The expressions of uncertainty is frequently transmitted by means of expressions such as the following: I don't know if, I wonder if, I'm not sure about, I doubt if, I must show my doubts about. The if form can be exchanged for whether in all the expressions above. Concluding, in the present unit we have analyzed in depth the linguistic resources to express uncertainty, condition, hypothesis, and contrast in English. We have paid special attention both to the grammatical resources that realize these meanings, as well as to the communicative value of these notions. Bibliography: Cooper-Cullen, Kortman, 2000. Cause, Condition, Confession, Contrast, Cognitive and Discourse Perspectives. Volume 33. Walter de Gruyter. Dixon, 2005. A Semantic Approach to English Grammar. Oxford University Press. Holiday, Mattison, 2014. An Introduction to Functional Grammar. Routledge. Swan, 2005. Practical English Usage. Oxford University Press. Sweet, 2014. A New English Grammar, Volume 1, Cambridge University Press. Willis, 2003. Rules, Patterns, and Words. Grammar and Lexis in English Language Teaching.